Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask Better Questions, the podcast where we delve into leadership and personal development. I'm your host, Peter, and today we're discussing stupidity. What is it? How to become resistant to the lure of its charms, and everything you need to know. So let's get started. For those of you who are new here, I'm Peter Adams. I have over 20 years' experience in leadership and consulting. I'm a published author and speaker in the leadership space, and my mission is to help excellent leaders become exceptional leaders through a better mindset. Before we start today's episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Colour4 Solutions. Colour4 Solutions offers leadership training for people who have reached a ceiling in their leadership journey and want to achieve more without dedicating substantial time and effort. So, stupidity. Today, for the purpose of this podcast, I will be heavily leaning on the work from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. His theory of stupidity was developed during his imprisonment by the Nazis. Okay, it posits that stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice. So it's more than evil. It's actually worse than evil. So from Dietrich Bonhoeffer's perspective, stupidity is not primarily an intellectual defect, but a moral one. The key aspects of his definition for stupidity is that it's a moral failing. Stupidity is fundamentally a moral issue rather than a lack of intelligence. Bonhoeffer observed that there are intellectually agile people who are stupid and intellectually dull people who are not stupid. Resistance to reason is definitely present. Stupid people are impervious to facts and logic. Arguments that contradict their perceived notions are pointless with them. They dismiss irrefutable evidence as inconsequential or incidental to their strongly held beliefs. Now, you may be already thinking of things that you could liken stupidity to. I will be getting to those in moments, but for the moment, let us continue with the definition. Stupidity allows people to be self-satisfied. So stupid individuals tend to be self-satisfied, easily irritated when challenged, potentially becoming dangerous. They don't like any information that doesn't fit with their worldview. It's kind of a sociological phenomenon. So stupidity is more prevalent in groups than in individuals in solitude, which suggests that it's a sociological rather than a psychological issue. So it's something that's picked up from the environment that you are in with other people, rather than something where lone people become ignorant and stupid. Vulnerability to power. So a strong upsurge of power, whether political or religious, tends to infect people with a lot of stupidity. Under the impact of rising power, people may surrender their inner independence and autonomous thinking. This is a postulate of his that seems to be a truism. When you see an uptick in power in a group, you tend to find that they also become more stupid, meaning presenting impervious approaches to factual arguments against them. There's also a loss of independence. When these people join groups or movements, they lose a lot of independence. So stupid people often become mindless tools, repeating slogans and catchphrases rather than actually expressing independent thoughts and articulate postulations of truth, so to speak. There's also a moral blindness. In this state, individuals become capable of evil acts while being incapable of recognizing those acts as evil. A lot of the times I've seen situations where people have gone, this person deserves this happening to them. Regardless of what it is that's actually happening, which is morally abhorrent, they convince themselves that because of stupidity, they feel this person deserves X, Y, and Z happening to them, regardless of what the actual underlying principles that they would otherwise hold true to be. So Bonhoeffer argued that stupidity, as defined in these terms, is more dangerous than malice because it's impervious to reason and facts, making it nearly impossible to counter through normal means of discourse or persuasion. You can't talk someone down from stupidity. This form of stupidity can only be overcome through an act of liberation, often requiring external circumstances to change before internal change becomes possible. It's a sociological thing. Society has to change in order for people to realize stupidity. So, Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity can be applied to several contemporary social issues. We've got misinformation and fake news. Bonhoeffer observed stupid people are resistant to facts that align with the current struggle against misinformation. His theory suggests that simply presenting accurate information may not be enough to combat fake news, as those who believe it often dismiss contradictory evidence. Political polarization is another thing that we can point to. In this day and age, everything is polarized. His theory emphasizes how power can infect people with stupidity, and it's relevant to increasing political polarization. It suggests that strong political movements may lead followers to abandon critical thinking in favor of group ideology and sloganism. The other point that I might make here is that social media tends to be an echo chamber, and so Bonhoeffer's insights that stupidity is more prevalent in groups rather than individuals in solitude can be applied to social media echo chambers where groupthink can reinforce and amplify irrational beliefs. And in fact, contradictory beliefs being held simultaneously. You can find that scientific evidence, one way or the other, will not sway people, and this can be something that you can argue is very prevalent in the climate change discussions that happen online at the minute. Additionally, conspiracy theories, either one way or another, can be proffered up as a modern society aligning with the observation that stupid people are impervious to reason and facts that contradict with preconceived notions. I was watching a video the other day that somebody was saying that they themselves were Jewish, and they were actually had a negative view of Israel and its foreign policy and some of the actions it was taking. And to an observer that they were arguing with, this is proof that the Jewish people own both sides of an argument. So therefore, it's either there is a conspiracy theory where Jews control the argument because they're pro-Jewish and pro-Israel, but even if a Jew is anti-Israel, then it proffers the same conspiracy theory. And this person's rightly pointed out that is like, there is no arguing against that because the logic holds in either direction because the underlying premise is just incorrect. It's also anti-intellectual. There is a rise in anti-intellectualism and the sentiment in a lot of societies, and that reflects in Bonhoeffer's warning about the dangers of abandoning critical thinking and independent thought. I believe that critical thinking is key here, but independent thought has been abandoned and is being continuously attacked because independent thoughts can be wrong. In fact, they often are. But that's not a reason to ban them because they're wrong. People need to have the right to be wrong. They need to have that right. In order to be right, you need to be able to be wrong. Otherwise, you don't actually hold any beliefs. You just understand these truths to be self-evident. But that's not a belief. That's just, we just believe this to be true. Can you prove it? No, I just believe it to be true. It's like, are you interested in proving it? No, because everyone believes as I do. And that is not a position where you can, that is an anti-intellectual position. we're also seeing a rise in extremism and radicalization. Bonhoeffer had, his theory explains individuals become radicalized as they surrender their inner independence to overwhelming impacts of rising power. So they attach their own identity to the rising importance of the cause that they are part of. We can see that in the public health crisis. So the resistance to public health measures during pandemics. We can see the discussions surrounding vaccines and hesitancy. We can see a lot of moral failings in the way in which people were treated during the public health crisis that was the pandemic. I guess to address these issues, Bonhoeffer, his theory suggests that education shouldn't focus on facts and the like, but should focus on critical thinking skills and moral reasoning rather than imparting correct information. Because correct information can change. A very famous quote, "When the facts change, I change my opinion. What do you do, sir?" It was attributed to Churchill, but it is a very telling, apt quote in terms of there are things that have changed, and in order to adjust your thinking, you need to change your approach to those facts. Our understanding of some facts has changed, and you also need to be receptive to information that might change the way in which you view information. Additionally, leaders and institutions should be wary of how their power might foster stupidity in followers and actively work to encourage independent thought. Now, this is something that a lot of businesses find is rather nasty. Independent thought amongst our workers doesn't help us in any way, shape, or form. Well, it actually does. It increases your innovation. Asking why it is that we're doing what we're doing is incredibly important, and that requires critical thought, and independent thought is the first part of that critical thought. You need to have the ability to think independently, perhaps get it wrong, so that you can get it right or improve your current situation. Efforts to combat misinformation should go beyond fact-checking to address underlying reasoning, so moral and social factors that make people susceptible to false beliefs. It's very easy to say people are swayed by X, Y, and Z, but ultimately speaking, as Bill Clinton has been many times quoted as having said, it's the economy, stupid. If people can't afford to feed themselves, they will hitch their wagon to whatever person promises to do so. It's fairly straightforward. We also need to recognize that overcoming stupidity, as it is presented in this day and age, often requires external changes before internal ones can occur. So, suggesting that systemic reforms may be necessary to address entrenched irrational beliefs. So, from that point of view, you need to be able to understand that the current status quo will remain the status quo until the environment changes. You can, within your organization, foster independent thought and the like, but if the status quo outside of the organization doesn't change, then this will forever be the way it is. You may be able to create pockets of non-stupidity, but that's all they will be. By applying Bonhoeffer's theory to these contemporary issues, we can develop more effective strategies for addressing the root causes of societal problems, and we can foster a more rational and critically thinking populace. It has been said many times, and it is a truism, that the last thing any political leader would like is a critical thinking populace, because they will typically be critical of the leaders of their populace. That said, sometimes it warrants it. Sometimes you need to have people willing to critically think about what it is that has been going on. And we need to be able to trust people to have enlightened conversations. If you're going to talk about climate change, and you need to be able to talk about renewable energy, you need to have a conversation that may include a real discussion about nuclear power. You need to be able to discuss the pros and cons rather than dismiss it and say, no, we're not talking about that. That's absurd. You need to actually justify that position. Otherwise, it's stupidity. And there is no real thread between intellect and stupidity as discussed above. You can have some very smart, stupid people, and you can have some very dumb, smart people who understand they don't know everything. This is where humility comes in to leadership, understanding your own limitations. So there are some key points to the theory and conclusions that we can draw for leadership. So one of them is stupidity versus malice, all right? So Bonhoeffer argued that stupidity is more dangerous than evil because evil can be exposed and confronted. Stupidity is impervious to reason and facts. Leaders should be more cautious when dealing with stupid individuals than with malicious ones. If somebody is setting out to be evil, it is a lot easier to deal with them. Now, evil may present in the outcomes that they are producing, but if somebody is motivated by stupidity, they will continue to do those, and it's very difficult to stop that. It's a moral and not an intellectual defect. Okay, so stupidity, according to Bonhoeffer, is essentially a moral failing rather than an intellectual one. Leaders should recognize that intelligence does not guarantee wisdom or moral behavior. Critical thinking is necessary to understand your own behavior. Self-reflection and pause is required to do so. Now, as leaders, you need to lead by example and pause and self-reflect. Have any of your decisions led to morally bad outcomes? And if so, at very least, acknowledge that. Acknowledge that you have made mistakes and that you are flawed. And it's a sociological phenomenon. So stupidity is more prevalent in groups than in individuals. So in solitude, people are unlikely to develop stupidity in the same way that they are able to in large groups. This is self-evident when you look around the world. You see groups of people being stupid in a lot more readily available anecdotal ways. Leaders should be aware of how group dynamics can foster and amplify that stupidity. So additionally, power amplifies stupidity. Bonhoeffer noted that strong upsurges in power, whether that's political or religious power, tends to infect a large part of humanity with stupidity. We have our views on that power, and they can be stupid. And I am the first to admit that during my life on this earth, I have been stupid at times, very stupid, and I have hitched my wagon to a number of different causes. And that said, here we are now, and I am doing my very best to not hold any beliefs so strongly that they cannot be changed. As a leader, you need to be vigilant about how your own power might foster stupidity in others. That can be both your followers and people who are against you. So resistance to facts is something to look out for. Stupid people, in Bonhoeffer's view in any case, are resistant to facts like water is resistant to fire. Anything that contradicts a prejudgment is often dismissed, and any irrefutable evidence is dismissed also as inconsequential. So leaders should understand that mere presentation of facts is possibly and likely not going to be sufficient to change minds. You're looking for people that are self-satisfied and aggressive. So Bonhoeffer observed that stupid people are often self-satisfied, so smug, and easily irritated, and they become dangerous when challenged. Now that's because anyone who believes they are right at all times becomes smug, and when proved incorrect, they become like cornered animals, and they will lash out. You've got to, as a leader, approach those individuals with caution and be prepared for that potential aggression. You want to liberate, not instruct. Stupid people can only be overcome, or stupidity can only really be overcome through an act of liberation. You've got to free somebody's mind in a very matrix sense, not instruct them. So leaders should focus on creating environments that foster independent thinking rather than simply providing information. You have to be able to reach somebody's mind and get them to understand that there are other appropriate ways of thinking that they may not be capable of, but they should be aware that they exist, and therefore limit themselves and their own belief structures to not being held so fundamentally that they cannot be changed. So I guess the conclusion here is you need to cultivate critical thinking, like encourage and reward independent thought within your teams. Be wary of groupthink. Lead by example. Demonstrate openness to new ideas and willingness to change your opinions based on evidence. Okay? That is key. Foster moral development. Emphasize ethical behavior and moral reasoning alongside intellectual growth. And create diverse teams that bring together individuals with different perspectives to challenge assumptions and prevent echo chambers. This is not bringing together people that look different. This is bringing together people that think different, because different opinions and perspectives are what will push critical thinking within your team. If you get a bunch of people that look different but think the same, you will have groupthink, and groupthink will end up and it will drive you and your team towards stupidity. Now, further to that, you need to encourage debate within your team and be vigilant of what's going on in your team. You need to prioritize critical thinking. And now, by understanding and applying that and understanding Bonhoeffer's theory, you can work to create more thoughtful, ethical, and effective organizations that are resistant to collective stupidity. Additionally, you will create better teams that last longer and are better places to work at, because your organization will become more ethical. So I hope you found today's insights valuable and actionable. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via the Color4 Solutions website. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Like and subscribe, but more importantly, share it with somebody who you feel needs to hear this. I'll be back next week with more. Until then, keep asking better questions, and remember, leadership is not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. Take care, and we'll see you back here next week.